Good morning, dear students. Let me hope you're fine, you still got. And let me take this opportunity to thank the Almighty God for giving us this gift of life. And indeed, He has continued to give us this gift of life. And again, I warmly send greetings to the parents of the students who were caring for the students, and also those who are in touch, and whoever helps to say that our learners get good academics. They are able to get something that can help them perform academically. So today, still, we are going to look at what we call history of East Africa, and basically this is Senior 2 history. And Senior 2 history, there are very many things that shape the history of East Africa as we saw them last time. And before I go ahead to look at something new, I would like to continue telling you that coronavirus is real, it's still there. Please try as much as possible to distance yourself while at home, and also move to the nearby places. At the same time, sanitize and mask yourself. So it is not that everything has ended today. Please read your books. Don't throw them away. Don't use them to do something else, to make paper bags. Please keep your books, and we make sure that we move ahead together. So with those few remarks, let us go ahead with our history of East Africa. Remember last time when we met, we looked at something new, and it was about the scramble and the partition of East Africa. There is what we call scramble and partition of East Africa. So with the scramble and the partition of East Africa, we looked at different things, and we said that the word scramble, it refers to the rush by the European powers to colonize the African countries. At the same time, can you please tell us what did we talk about partition? So with the partition, we said that this is the division. We can call it divisionism. You divide different countries, and they are controlled by different colonial masters. For example, we had Uganda, we had Kenya, and some other areas that were controlled by Britain. At the same time, we had the German controlling Tanganyika. So meaning that scramble, it is the rush. You go and you colonize. For example, you can colonize a place. You have been staying at Nkowe as a place. Then after, with some time, you find a new place. Then you go there and you build your own house there. So with doing that, it means that you leaving the original place, you go and colonize some other places. So meaning that colonization, or the word scramble, it meant the rush by the European powers to colonize the East African countries, where we said that we also had the word partition. Why are we defining these key words in the word scramble and partition? I want you to understand. I want you to analyze and see that if at all they ask the word scramble, they may say scramble, they may say rush. That is why we are defining scramble as the rush by the European powers, that is basically Britain, German, and some other big powers controlling the African countries, where we had Uganda, we had Kenya, we had some other countries that were colonized by or that were controlled by what we call the British or Britain as a country. At the same time, we had Tanganyika, and it was controlled by German. Okay? So, let me hope now you're reflecting. What is the word scramble and partition? Again, we say that there are very many ways how actually this scramble and partition of West Africa took place. So they said that the scramble and the partition of East Africa, it was basically in 3 phases. One of the phases was the Berlin Conference. Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. Okay? The second one, we had what we call the first Anglo-German conflict or agreement. The first Anglo-Germany agreement of the year, that is 1886. Then at the same time, we had what we call the second Anglo-German agreement of the year, that is 1890, and this one known as the Heligoland Treaty. Okay? So, let me hope now you're following this, that the partition of East Africa, it took place in 3 phases. One of the phases was the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. And this Berlin Conference, it is called the Berlin Conference, reason being that it was in a place called the Berlin, the capital city. So meaning that in the year 1884, a meeting was held, a conference was held, and it was chaired by a German chancellor known as Otto von Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck. Okay? So it was chaired by a man called Otto von Bismarck, where they discussed a number of issues, a number of suggestions were made during this conference. So very many things were actually discussed in this Berlin Conference. Then, secondly, there is what we call the first Anglo-German Conference of the year 1886. So this conference, it also had the outcomes. And what were they discussing about? We discussed very many issues about this one. At the second time, we had what we call the second Anglo-Germany Agreement of 1890, and it is commonly known as the Heligoland Treaty. The Heligoland Treaty. So, very many things we discuss about what we call the scramble and the partition of East Africa. There are very many issues, reasons as to why they were scramble and partition of East Africa. One, the need for raw materials. That is one of the issues as to why these people, they came and they colonized and they partitioned the East African countries. The need for raw materials. Why? Remember, in the early 1750s in England, they experienced what we call the Industrial Revolution. What do we mean by the Industrial Revolution? The Industrial Revolution. In the early 1750s, Europe had adopted or embarked on the idea of industrializing their cities, whereby they started producing very many finished goods. And actually it was the European manufactured goods. Even during the mercantilism era, that era of mercantilism, when I talk of mercantilism, it is a big word, but it can mean something that it was a time whereby very many countries had adopted the idea of industrial revolution, or the idea of industrializing themselves. That is mercantilism. Mercantilism. Or you can call it the mercantile era. Very many countries adopted that idea of industrialization, whereby they produced goods in large quantities, and at the same time they reached an extent whereby they never had the market. So very many finished goods were flooded in the European markets. What they had to do was to look for the way out of how they can sell off their goods. So basically, they had to come to Africa, to East Africa basically, and that is why we experienced what we call a scramble and the partition of East Africa, because they needed the market where they can sell off their European manufactured goods. Okay, let me hope we are following. Again, remember, they had also invented what we call the scientific revolution. Scientific revolution. This scientific revolution, it involves the use of machines to work as humans. For example, when you look at China, today, they are inventing what we call the robot system. The use of the robots to do the manual work, to do the manual labor, whereby you can find in industries, there are very many people, but they are replaced with machines. They can now use the machines to replace the human being. So meaning that they have to introduce more and more machines, more robots to work as humans. So in so doing that, they are huge sums of manufactured goods. So meaning that they lacked the market, and then at the same time, their industries lacked what we call raw materials. Another point, the raw materials, because they came at an extent whereby their industries were in need of the raw materials. So they came to East Africa to scramble and partition them in order to get what we call the raw materials. Reason being that they had what we call the hungry European industries. That word hungry. You can use the word hungry. Hungry in the quotes. Hungry. Whereby they lacked what we call enough raw materials. And in Africa, for us, we had enough raw materials. So they had to come and look somewhere. Is this Uganda having materials? Is this Kenya having a lot of raw material? Let us come, we exploit them, and we feed our own industries. Then, during the scientific revolution and this revolution, also we had what we call overpopulation. They became overpopulated. Batandi kokuzala nnyo. So there is an extent nga tebalina bakola ki we bateeka abantu abo ng'abantu bangi. They had to look the way out where they can resettle their surplus population. So they were overpopulated. So they needed the places where they can come and do what we call resettling of their surplus population. There are very many reasons as to why they scrambled and partitioned the East Africans, but we cannot explain all of them because we have to go to something else. But also we had what we call the effects of the scramble, or the effects of the partition of East Africa, where we said that the scramble and partition completely eroded what we call the independence of the African countries. Why are we saying the independence of the African countries? Reason being that when the colonial masters came, they colonized, for example, Kenya and Uganda. Some people, they call it Uganda, and Uganda were colonized by what you call Britain. At the second time, we had Tanganyika, which was colonized and partitioned by these people called the Germans. So, meaning that a country, a colonial power, to control the East African country, it influences all the affairs of that weaker country. Which affairs are we talking about? We talk about political, social, economical, and we can have social, political, economical, and some other religious aspects. Okay? So, in those aspects, that is where these people control the East African countries. So, still, we are looking at the scramble and the partition, the effects. How is the scramble and the partition affected the people of East Africa? At the same time, it also led to the introduction of the new crops. Remember, originally, in East Africa, we were interested in growing what we call food crops. But when these people came, they actually forced us to grow what we call cash crops. So these cash crops, they replace what we call the food crops. So in other words, people were no longer growing food for their own, but they were growing what we call cash crops like coffee, like cotton, and very many others. So meaning that these cash crops, they were introduced in East African countries, and Africans were neglected from growing what we call food crops. There are very many effects, as we said, that anti-gun tax were also introduced by these colonial masters. And remember that before these people coming, our boundaries were not clearly drawn. The boundaries were not clearly shown. That is why you can find it today that we have the map of East Africa, we have the map of Uganda, we have the map of Kenya, we have the map of Tanzania or Tanganyika. So, when they scrambled and partitioned us, we were able to define our boundaries. Kati osanga no gama ti Uganda ita wano nedda bweti ate no wansi waliwo Tanzania ate side eno Kenya, you see. So our boundaries were clearly drawn. And remember, the people to come out the coast of East Africa, we had what we call the traders. And among these traders, we had some people called the Arabs. And when they came, you know what they did? Can you still remember what the Arabs introduced at the coast of East Africa? Can you tell us? I can say, you're now fidgeting around. to tell us, but you've not been reading. That is why you are there quaking around. So it means that what you have to do as an individual, you get your senior one work. Then after getting your senior one work, you come on board. You read about the merchants or the Arabs. We have the Persians, the Oman Arabs, very many. Those are the people who came at the coast of East Africa. When the Arabs came at the coast of East Africa as traders, they introduced what we call crop growing. Crop growing, and it was basically cash crops. What they had to do, they established plantations everywhere. They established plantations. But to make matters worse, these people were very few in numbers. They could not stand alone to dig into those farms. So what they had to do was at least to embark on what we call slave trade. So slave trade, it was brought by the Arabs, and this is the act of selling and buying of human beings. Imagine, pambi ngagwe ngabakutunda ogenda okole, and without pay. And if you refuse, they used to cane you publicly. Okay? So with this event of slave trade, very many people suffered. And when I trace back how those people suffered, I feel like, crying. But we cannot actually lament or go ahead to still be in that situation, because now it is a change in the world. So when they came, they introduced what we call slave trade. And these people were to work in the plantation, basically the crop plantations. So with the time, the reason as to why these Papuans, they are claiming that they scrambled and partitioned East Africa, basically it was to end slave trade. And later, they introduced what we call legitimate trade. Legitimate trade, which was the trade that carried out basically on commodities or goods, selling, exchanging of goods for goods, instead of humans for humans, or instead of selling human beings. So they introduced what we call, so that is one of the effects. They established slave trade and introduced what we call legitimate trade. Okay? Then development of infrastructures. For example, in the areas of interest, for example, in Uganda, in the areas of interest where they found what we call mineral resources. For example, one time I told you that when you look at South African history, basically, discovery in South Africa, at Kimberley place in South Africa, in the year 1867 at Kimberley, they introduced they discovered what we call minerals. At the same time, if you go further, in Transvaal, and the Orange Free States, they also discovered what we call minerals. But when you look at the roads that go up to those areas, they were developed more than or compared to the other roads in the place. Even in Uganda, they also had to develop some of the areas where there are minerals. So bonga banonya minerals iludawa ntiziri hoima, so they can develop the infrastructure. So very many infrastructure development took place. Then the rivalries between the superpowers or the wars, Germany and Britain, they conflicted among themselves due to the effect that these people were rushing to take over the other colonies in some places, And also, we said that it ended the, what we call, or it increased what we call exploitation of East Africa. The exploitation of East African resources. Because due to the development of infrastructure, they had to do what we call exploitation of more and more African resources. So, leaders were developed, or very many leaders rose up during that era. For example, we had Tipu as a leader. At the same time, we had Nyungu ya Mawe, we had Milambo. Those leaders who became more prominent due to the scramble and the partition. Remember, we had what we call the collaborators. Who is a collaborator? We are going to say all of that in our next lesson. Having had a recap of what we talked about last time, now, today, we are going to look at something new. Let me hope you are prepared. We are going to look at something which is a very, very new, and I think it is connected to the scramble and the partition of East Africa, as we are going to see. So it is connected to the scramble and the partition of East Africa, but it is it should be remembered that in the scramble and the partition of East Africa, very many African leaders lost the authorities. Very many African leaders lost the authority. So I'm still teacher Wasamatia, and I'm still taking you through this. Now today we are going to look at something new. Now, the methods that were used by the British to rule in Uganda, used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. It is very interesting. Methods used by the British, Now we are looking at the method used by the British to establish. They have used the word to establish. To establish their role in Uganda. Let me hope we are tipa. You can try as much as possible to copy this heading so that we can go ahead. So, methods used by the British to establish. We have used the word to establish. You can use to extend their role. Okay? So, there are very many words you can use. So, I hope by the end of this lesson, you are going to be able to tell us the methods that were used by the British to extend or establish their role in Uganda. At the same time, you're going to analyze or appreciate the British in controlling Uganda. Remember, in the partition of East Africa, we had what we call 3 phases. And in the scramble of partition of East Africa, we had what we call the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 that was chaired by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. We had what we call the First Anglo-German Agreement of the year 1886. And we had what we call the Second Anglo-German Agreement of the year 1890, and it was known as the Heligoland Treaty. Now, in the partition of East Africa, we had Uganda, Kenya, and some other parts that were colonized or controlled by the British. Now, even there are other histories that teaches us the methods used by the British to extend or establish their role in Kenya, okay, or method used by the Germans to extend their role or to establish their role in Tanganyika. So, for this, we are going to look at the methods used by the British to establish their role in basically Uganda. So, here we are going to say that there are a number, there are a number, you can say, of tactics, comma, you can say techniques, sorry, this is Q, techniques. You can say methods, that were used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. So, if at all they don't use the word methods, they can use the tactics. Obukodio, techniques. For example, obukodio chibuwa bwokozesa gwe nga gwe. If I told you you're doing something, which techniques do you use? For example, you've been failing history. Which techniques are you going to use to make sure that you pass history? Okay? You're going to do like this. For example, you can make your own timetable. That is your first technique. You make your own timetable for reading history. Secondly, you may say that I'm going to be consulting the teachers. Thirdly, you can say that I'm going to be reading the books. So you are now trying to give us the techniques of how you can pass history. Oyinza otya okuyita? Which taxi do you use? For example, obanga wali oyizeko, you did what we call hunting, oli muyizi. Buuza mama, buuza taata, abakazi tebayiganga tobuuza mama. Buuza taata, omugambe taata, ndaba entuula eziri wali eri, ndaba amafumu, ewaka tulinawo embwa nnyingi. Mwakwatanga ensolo naye, what did you use? Ajja kubuulira nti bwe tubanga tugenda okugira ensolo oba okukwata ensolo yaffe tugenda tusooka okukola ki kye bayita okwandaaza n'ogenda olaba ddala ensolo weeri yalumyalumye ku bisubi n'otryinga n'olaba techniques ogenda osooba tubula bagamba tyanatta ekiziga akola ki osooba ekiziga ensolo eyo gy'ozize. So meaning that there are very many techniques or tactics that we use in order to establish something. For example, in South Africa currently, there are riots or there are rebellions over the people. They are saying that it is over the imprisonment of the former president Jacob Zuma. Though historians can criticize that, because for all you know the situation in South Africa, there are very many things that you can attach on such instances. So now, which techniques is the president of South Africa has used to embark on the raids? If at all we can talk to the president Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of South Africa, what techniques has he used to curb down the strikes in South Africa? Okay? Again, another live example, the coronavirus, the pandemic that we are having right now. Which techniques are the government using, or which techniques are the government using to embark on the spread of coronavirus? bintu ki byakozesa gavumenti bintu ki byekoze oba mitendera ki gyegoberedde okufuba okulaba nti at least emalawo obulwadde bwa coronavirus. So you also try to give out the techniques. There are very many techniques. So I'm still analyzing, or I'm still throwing more light on what we call the techniques or methods. So at least I want to give you a statement that holds some water, that gives a meaning, that when I talk about the methods, when I talk about the tactics or the techniques, you can at least be able to tell us something. Again, when we trace the origin of the Ingoni in East Africa, the Ingoni, they used what we call the cow horn tactics. Cow horn tactics. And there is another tactic called the guerrilla war. Guerrilla war tactics. So now, the cow horn tactics used by the Ingoni in East Africa. Cow horn, I know you've ever seen a cow. Boba wali olabye ente with the horns. Amayembe nga they are carving like this. Naye nga ate nga amayembe gayo gakola ki? Gakavinga gali bwe gati naye nga ante. I think those who rear cattle, you can trace and know which kind of cattle we're talking about. So ente ngeina mayembe, for example, we had what we call the bihogo cow. Ente yayagalwa nnyo abachwezi. Mayembe ina mawavu bwe gati. So why are they calling it the cow horn taxi? Reason being that when these Ingonis were attacking the enemies, they used to come in a form of a cow horn. Ngabo diakola bwe editinga nabo. They could surround you this side, the other side, and this side. So meaning that for you, you had to stay just in the middle. That is why it was called the cow horn tax. Or you can call it the engulfing an enemy. So it was the cow horn tax used by Lezepe. So, but for this case, we are going to talk about something else. That is with the establishing of the rule. Okay, so we are saying that there are several number of tactics, or there are a number of tactics, techniques, or methods that were used by these people to achieve their goal. Methods that were used by the British, to achieve their goal in colonizing Uganda. Okay, so let me hope. I want you to at least we move at the same pace, okay? So there are very many tactics. Let me hope you're writing that are used by the British, or that are used by these people to extend or achieve their goal in Uganda, basically. So we are looking at in Uganda. But we cannot deny the fact that the Africans were civilized. They had their own way of doing things. But extension of the colonial role in Uganda, it depended on what we call the country's attitude. Country's attitude. It depended on what we call the country's attitude. Eneisa yabwe baberangawo batya. Remember, we had what we call the accommodative societies. The accommodative societies we had what we call the hostile societies, among others. So with the accommodative societies, the tactics or the methods they used, it was a little bit different from those of the hostile tribes or societies. For example, here in Uganda, we had some of the accommodative tribes, such as the Baganda, Basoga, among others. So those were among the accommodative societies. Then the hostiles, the other hostile one, we had what we call the Bunyolo, the Maasai, the Nandi. They were very hostile. Siba kuzanyirako. So the methods that were used by the Europeans or used by the British to establish their role in particularly Uganda, it was not the method they used in a accommodative society. So it was a little bit different. So let me hope you're through with that. Then we are going to analyze the methods. There is a reason as to why I'm taking you on slowly, so that we can be able to grasp what we are looking at. Okay? Now, of course, there are very many methods that were used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. One of them, so now we are analyzing the methods. One of them, it was signing of treaties. That is one of the methods that were used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. In Uganda. Now, this is quite interesting. The signing of treaties. Naawe kyemanyi wali okozeko endagaano yonna oba n'osayiningako somewhere. Abamu abazadde babalekera ettaka. They left you with a piece of land. So you used to sell it. But what you do, you sign treaties that they have sold this land to who and who, or to this and this one. Okay? So meaning that the signing of treaties was one of the methods that were used by the British to establish or extend their role in Uganda. So they are saying that, for example, in Buganda, there was the signing of, or they signed in Buganda, they signed the 19 or Buganda Agreement. Buganda Agreement. Have you ever heard about the Buganda Agreement of 1900? Let me hope you ever heard about what we call the 1900 Buganda Agreement. Then we had also in Ankole in 1901, a treaty was also signed in Ankole. In 1901, they signed the Ankole Agreement. Okay? So in 1901, in 1900, they signed what we call the Buganda Agreement. Then in 1901, they also signed what we call the Ankole Agreement. And in 1902, and then 1902, they signed another treaty, and it was called the Toro Treaty. They signed the Toro Treaty or agreement. Now, the reason I saw it is called the Buganda Agreement. It was said in the Buganda. In the Buganda, 1900. So in these 3 consecutive years, 1900, 1901, they said what we call the agreement. Then in 1902, they said what we call the Toro Agreement or treaty. Okay? So the signing of treaties. And what was the essence of signing these treaties? It was to ally with the Africans, or it was to help them move their ways or establish their role in East Africa. So, when we look at this, the signing of treaties, it enabled them. Some of them were treaties of friendship. Tubere ba mukwano, tubere nga fenna tuli fenna kitole. Bambi jana tutegeko mukwano tulage nti tuli ba mukwano. N'okubadde tubadde baki kale tuli ba mukwano. The signing of treaties. Some of them were treaties on land. The treaties, for example, 1900 Buganda Agreement, that divided the African land. That is why you hear Baganda, they are saying that twagala maira akenda. All of this, it was due to the signing of the Buganda Agreement. That is why today there is an issue of the lost counties of Buyanga and the Bugangais. You hear Tibyafe. Nawulira kayimba byali bya Buganda byadda kalo kaliko bananyiniko, meaning that they are treasuring what we call their land. So the 1900 Buganda Agreement divided the African land, but it basically had some basically this Buganda Agreement, it was to extend the British rule in Uganda. In Uganda, treaties of friendship that made these people to at least take the land of the Africans. So, in order to soften their hearts, they had to sign a treaties. We are friends. So, in the course of the signing treaties, they were extending their role to Uganda. To Uganda, they were extending their role. Ngabongera. Tubadde no twekwese, we are in a hideout. So what they had to do was to come. We sign treaties, you become our friends. Okay? So meaning that they have already extended their role to Uganda. So that is one of the methods that were used by these people to establish their role in Uganda. Again, we are going to look at another. That is the use of force. Now we are going to see another method, the use of force. Why? So the second one, it is the use of force. So this is the second method, the use of force. Remember, we are looking at the method used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. Bakozesanga neki n'amaanyi to extend their rule. Why? Because remember that we had what we call the accommodative societies. And what we call the hostile societies. Okay? Why were these people, or the British, why were they using force? Reason being that they reached into some areas, and these people, they tended not to change or to welcome them. For example, we had the Bunyoro, or the Banyoros. We had the Nandi. We had the Maasai. who were very hostile. Tebali bango. Get at the moment you pretend that you coming to them. And they killed the men of them, by the way. They killed the men of them who were coming from Britain. Because they were home. So in the due course of that, what they had to do was to extend their what? Their rule. They used the force. They reached an extent whereby they had to pull out guns. Mondo. No. These Banyoros, these Nandi, we are going now to use force. Okay? So what they had to do, they pulled out the guns and attacked the hostile tribes. So with the time, what they had to do was at least to establish what we call their role in Uganda. So these people, all the British, they used the force to establish their role in basically Uganda and some other hostile areas. And in the due course of doing the use of force, they used what we call military or direct military conflict. They used what we call direct military confrontation. They use the direct military confrontation. What do you mean by direct military confrontation? So with the direct military confrontation, it involves use of the army on the ground. You come, for example, as you say, what is taking place in South Africa, the armies and the police, they come to the areas where there are resistors. Okay? Nebagamba abaneno bebaganyire tasigo the yamajene gayingirawo gonna directly military confrontation. They could beat up the people. They could also tear gas, bleeding, So meaning that they use what we call the direct military confrontation. And in other words, to make matters worse, even they took their land. Their land were confiscated because of their hostile nature. Babatolako nebyabwe netaka lyabwe. Bunyolo, the Nandi, the Maasai in Kenya. That is why with the time it created the divisionism. Because these people, they used to run from different places. You can find the Maasai in Kenya, in Tanganyika, and some other northern places of Uganda. In Uganda, basically. Okay? Let me hope you've got what we call the use of the force. So it was the second method used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. And the third one, it is the use of collaborators. Use of collaborators. The use of collaborators is the third method. Now remember I hinted on what we call collaborators. Now collaborator, I remember when I was still in O-level, I studied about collaborators. And even in P5, there is a teacher who taught us something about collaborators. And in your own view, in your own explanation, can you please explain what we call a collaborator? Can you explain? Try. You write them down, okay? And when you have a question, at least write it down and we shall be able to answer that. So, to my own understanding, a collaborator is a person who is willingly accepted to support the interests of another person to make sure that he or she succeeds. I beg your pardon. A collaborator is a person who is willingly accept to support the interest of another person to make sure that he or she succeeds. Tie muntu oyo ayambako omuntu omulala mu bintu ebyenjawulo okulaba nti abako nekyakola nekyaggusa. Is a person who is willingly accept to support the interest of another person to make sure that he or she succeeds. Okay? So, for example, among the collaborators, the renowned collaborators, we had the Semei Kakungolo. Okay? Semei Kakungolo was one of the collaborators that was used by the British to extend their role to the eastern parts of Uganda. Eastern parts of Uganda. Kikyentegeeza nti baddira omwami ono Semei Kakongolo ne bamuteeka mu eastern parts of Uganda to extend or establish the colonial rule. So among the collaborators, we had Semei Kakongolo, who was sent to the eastern parts of Uganda to extend the colonial rule in Uganda, basically in Busoga. Semei Kakongolo extended the colonial rule to Bukedi, Busoga, okay? Oh no, we back extending the colonial rule to these places of Bukedi. We had Busoga, we had Budaka, Bugisho, Budama, Bugisho, Budaka, Budama, among others. Okay, so those are some of the places where Semei Kakongolo extended the colonial role to some of these places. So the use of the collaborators. Remember, we've said that a collaborator is a person who is willingly accept to support the interests of another person to make sure that he or she succeed. So as a collaborator, for example, Semei Kakongolo was sent to the eastern parts of Uganda, probably Bukedi, Busoga, Bugisho, Budaka, Budama, to extend the British role in Uganda. Okay? Let me hope that we are following and we can be able to trace some of the places. And I think those who are living that side, you can be able to ask some of those old people who are there. And I think they know some of the stories about Semei Kakongolo. So they know very many things. Okay? Now, that was the third method. Now we are going to go to the fourth method. That is a direct. That is the fourth one. Okay? Direct and indirect role. Direct and indirect role. Let me hope we are together. Can you please write that one? Direct and indirect role. So now, with the direct and indirect role, this is the system of governance. We can write and say that this is the system of governance. That was used by the British to extend to establish their role in Uganda. Okay? This is the system of governance that was used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. Remember, we are talking about what we call the direct and indirect system of government. So now, the British, they used what we call direct rule in the areas, listen very carefully, where was the direct rule applied? Or where was it used? Okay? Direct system, it was applied among the hostile tribes or the hostile societies. Let me hope you've put that one down. I beg your pardon. The direct system of administration, it was applied it was used by the British to the areas where they were hostile. Ngapote bagala no sense. For example, the direct system was used on people of Bunyolo, of the Nandi, of Maasai. So, the direct system of administration was basically used on these hostile tribes. So, why were they using the direct? Because they had denied. That is why they resorted to the use of force. The indirect system of administration, it was used on basically the accommodative societies. The accommodative society, for example, Buganda, they use what we call the indirect. They conflict, And to make matters worse, the colonial administration or the British, they used the accommodative societies to oppose what we call the hostile tribes or societies. For example, Buganda was supported by the British over Bunyoro because remember they had their own carried hatred. Ndoza mubijjukira Abaganda n'Abanyoro bali tebakola ki tebakwatagana. So they were fighting over the lost counties of Buyaga and Buganga is. So since they had that long carried hatred, that long-held hatred, what they had to do was the British had to come in and support the Baganda. The Bagamba mwe Baganda mwe tubagala nnyo. But you are not friends with the Bunyoro. What you had to do, go there, mubawalane, mpalanirako. Okay? Nebewalana. So the British, they supported the Baganda or the Buganda to extend their role to some of the hostile areas such as Bunyoro. Nebagenda yo. So they financed the Bagandas over the Bunyo. So that is the use of the direct and the indirect. So but basobola kutuuka yo, but what they had to do, nebakola ki? Nebatuma Abaganda. That is indirect. Nebagenda nebakikola ki? Because they had that long-held hatred of the lost counties of Buyaga and the Buganga is. So meaning that these longer-held hatred that were there before, it was to extend their role over the Banyolos. Okay? So that is one of the role that was used by these people. That is the direct and the indirect rule. Okay? Of course, there are very many issues, but I can see we are running out of time. And when we come back, I think next time, we shall add more and more methods that were used by the British to establish their role in Uganda, but we cannot actually sit back and say that all these methods that were used by the British. Some of them were supported by the collaborators. And there are very many historians. There are very many writers who has come up with at least some of the definitions or some of the arguments to supplement the methods that were used by the British to establish their role in Uganda. As you said that, please, if you're there at home, try as much as possible to read it through and make sure that you follow us. So, in these few minutes, I would like to say that Teacher Waswa, Matia, history teacher and in Uganda, and I'm urging that we can stay together. We can try as much as possible to move together, to move at the same pace. And I urge you to stay home, stay safe. Please try as much as possible to sanitize yourself. Please don't move to each and every place. Make sure that you do some of the work, you help the parents, and of course, time will come, we shall be able to come back at school. So I wish you a nice day, and I wish you everything that, actually I would like to say that everything that is good, but also share with a friend, okay? Sit, you share with a friend, and with time, you can be able to go ahead. So we shall meet next time. Thank you for listening.